Welcome back to Hacked at Home. I'm your host, Tom Geisler, owner of Blue Chameleon Investigations. Before we start, if you like our content, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. Today, we are going into why encrypted messaging apps become a necessity, not just a luxury. Joining me, as always, is our expert, Patrick Wright, and our non-technical voice of reason, Elaina Rivera. Patrick, why is such a topic important today?
Yeah, sure. And good morning again to all of our listeners and Tom and Elaina. So a lot of people may not know, maybe those that read deep into the news, China and a few other nation states, but particularly China, has launched a huge espionage campaign against the world, but there's a particular English little spice on it when it comes to the United States. So the purpose behind this espionage campaign, I can't tell you. That information hasn't been released, so we could assume 1,000 different things. But I think it's probably safe to say that when China starts targeting metadata and regular people, like normal citizens' cell phones and things like that, it's probably not for a good reason. So that's a really big thing in the cybersecurity industry right now, is nation state level. And nation state, for our listeners, that means a hacking group, some sort of advanced persistent threat group, perhaps, that is attached and sponsored, paid for by an actual country: North Korea, China, Russia, Iran, anybody like that. So yeah, it's particularly interesting right now, Tom, to address this stuff.
So, starting with the big picture, why is the government urging people to use encrypted messaging apps, and what's changed?
Sure. So there's always a certain level of hacking and breaching and stuff that's honestly is expected. It's kind of a baseline. When one government launches a very noticeable, and the intelligence community confirms it, a very noticeable espionage campaign against someone else, it makes sense for that government, the recipient government of the espionage campaign, to then respond. So our government, we have CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, and a few other agencies, FBI, and their cohorts in the intelligence community. They're really just advising their citizens on how to fight back against this espionage campaign. That's really what it is. If there's a bigger picture at play here, which there almost always is, right? There almost always is. We'll never know about it. But for now, I'm actually, the government doesn't have the best track record of advising people on digital security, how to protect yourselves and things like that. There's a lot of red tape and bureaucracy that gets in the way.
Okay.
But this time they ignored all of the political stuff, and they gave us some really good advice. And that advice is start using encrypted messaging apps.
What
So
exactly? What does that actually mean?
Yeah. So encryption is really interesting. Encryption is a way to basically hide the contents of your messaging from someone that may intercept it. So a good way to visualize encryption is picture a big locked box, big heavy locked box. You put a message in and someone else puts a message in. There's only two keys to that box in the world. You have one and the recipient has one. And you share this keys. You go back and forth and you unlock the box, you reach in, then you can read your message. The box is the encryption. So in that scenario, it's a great question, Elaina. In that scenario, if you send a message in a box and someone intercepts your box, for instance, if China intercepts your message from your phone, but it's encrypted, then all they have is the box. They can't reach inside of the box and get the message out. And that's what encryption does for us. So even if, and there's a certain level of just accepting the fact that your information is compromised that has to happen in the digital age. Having very secure browsing behaviors, that internet safety behaviors, things of that nature is important. But also using technology to the fullest extent that we can to keep ourselves safe is also important. And that's part of what encryption does for us. Even if they intercept your message, they're not going to be able to read it. They won't be able to understand it or anything like that.
Okay. So let's talk about how these apps work and which ones can people trust. Can you break it down for us, Patrick?
Yeah, sure. So again, excellent question here. So there are some shady apps that you shouldn't trust, and there are some reputable kind of what I would call mainstream apps that are perfectly fine to use. So before we dig into the individual apps, we should talk about end-to-end encryption. So some apps only encrypt their messages for part of the journey from sender to recipient. Then you have apps that encrypt the messaging from the app, from the sender, all the way to the recipient in the app, wherever they happen to be in the world. That's called end-to-end encryption. End-to-end encryption significantly boosts your protection for messaging. It really does. So instead of there being holes for partial encryption programs, there are no holes where a hacker or someone that is trying to spy on you can actually grab unencrypted information, decode it, and actually see the contents of the messaging. So that's kind of interesting. You know, we're not going to get too weeds into it from a technical perspective, but there are two, maybe three messaging apps that offer end-to-end encryption. I use two of three of these regularly. The first is Signal. Signal, Signal. Signal is a wonderful messaging app. They fight very hard as an application to keep their users private, keep communications private. I love that about them. Absolutely
Never
love
heard
it.
of Signal.
Signal's great. Yeah,
Yeah,
Signal.
we've used Signal
Signal's
before
really.
in our cases.
Yeah, CMPI cases. Yeah,
Yes.
I absolutely believe it. Like a lot of encrypted apps, there are some nefarious kind of darker parts of Signal in the other encryption app communities. But for the most part, Signal is absolutely wonderful. Love it to death. Their company has a pretty strong stance, a pretty strong statement out on privacy and protection for their users. So we love that. End-to-end encryption is amazing. So the next one that probably most of our listeners have heard of, maybe even use, is WhatsApp. So WhatsApp is the direct messaging that, it's owned by Facebook Meta. I use WhatsApp for international communication almost daily. So it's really popular international scenes. And I've spoken to people in Latin America. I've spoken to people in Dubai with WhatsApp. I mean, it's just a popular messaging platform. They have millions upon millions of users on WhatsApp. And WhatsApp, again, just like Signal, offers end-to-end encryption. So from the time you open the app to the time you close the app, everything you did was encrypted, and that keeps you safe. Encryption, well, it will keep your data safe. Encryption will keep your data safe. And that's something that's important, to our users that feel that they are under attack, or that something nefarious, something suspicious is happening in their life. Knowing that their data is encrypted when they're sending pictures, they're sending documents. People basically conduct their entire lives off of a cell phone now. So it's
Real.
nice to know that when you send a document that it is encrypted, and even if someone does intercept it and try to look at it, they won't be able to understand it. So there's a lot of comfort that comes from using encryption as well. But just as a small footnote, in the application community, there is a really big push for transparency and open source coding in applications like this. Open source code means, the community at large of nerds, folks like myself, actually have access to the code. We can look at it, and we can actually help make sure there aren't backdoors into the code. So it's really interesting.
Is Signal pretty easy to use? Is it user friendly?
Yeah, I love Signal. So one of the cool things, and that's a wonderful question, Elaina. One of the cool things about messaging apps is, first and foremost, they're an app. And one of the most important things that are discussed about when applications are developed is user experience and user friendliness. Because you can have a great app, but if nobody can use it, or if it's difficult to use, nobody's really going to interact with it. So while on the technical side, these guys might be powerhouses, like Signal, don't let that scare you away from it, thinking you won't be able to use the application or anything. In a lot of instances, apps like Signal are sometimes easier to use than the more mainstream commercialized apps.
More
So
focused on the security rather than the fluffy stuff?
yeah, fluffy stuff is actually a good thing to call it. Yeah. the marketing stuff, the
Yeah.
marketing magic that marketing departments put together. But yeah, Signal's legit. I love Signal to death. I can't recommend them enough. I've used them for years. I still actively use it, and I actively use WhatsApp as well. And I can tell you, they're really easy to use. They really are. Obviously, being in the cybersecurity industry, we deal with a lot of sensitive information for clients and things. So, if we're working with an international client, we're sending documents back and forth. It's nice to know that it's encrypted. It gives you a small degree of comfort to know that you're using an encrypted application.
I didn't realize what we started using WhatsApp was more because we have a lot of Android and Apple users in our family, myself and my husband being Android users, and you can't share
Droid.
pictures and videos or anything through standard text that'll go through without being compressed. So using WhatsApp is like the easiest way, but it's difficult. I could barely get my mom to download it, let alone use it. I have to text her to go check it. So a lot of it too is changing habits. It's like, can you check your WhatsApp? I sent you a bunch of stuff there, but
Yeah.
WhatsApp is pretty easy to use and it's free.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yep.
a good way. And I think that user-friendly side could be something easy we could get our other family members to use and stuff like that in the light of being more secure. And Signal, I gotta check it out.
Yeah, I absolutely love them. They're really easy to use. WhatsApp is easy enough. I actually use that for several domestic connections as well. It's more secure. One thing I did forget to mention, guys, iMessage is also end-to-end encrypted. So for any of our users using iMessage to send documents, photos, whatever it is, that is also encrypted.
Oh, that's
So
good to know.
that's important. Yeah.
Okay, are there any downsides of using encrypted apps? Like, for instance, does it make it harder to recover messages?
Sort of yes, sort of no. Thankfully, the downsides to using encrypted encrypted messaging is mostly just minor inconveniences, like accessing your data backups. You can do a few more hoops to do that part of the process. So backups require a little bit of extra TLC, but by and large, the answer is no. There are some minor inconveniences, yes. What I call them challenging, no, not at all. We have to remember again, just because the app is encrypted doesn't mean it's not a fully functional, easy to use, user-friendly app still. They just happen to, give their users a little bit more benefit on the back end with encryption and things like that.
Random question.
I love
Maybe
random.
both of you could possibly answer it. It just came to mind. But, when it comes to stuff like court and getting a subpoena to obtain messaging and stuff like that, it's typically through your phone company. How would it work with something like this if there was a big case, but it's not on the default phone messaging, it's through a third-party application? If it was a big case, is there a way to subpoena, Tom? I don't know. Is that like
Yeah, there is. So like in the case, and Tom, feel free to tell me to shut up if I stick my foot in my. But like in the case of WhatsApp is owned by Meta. Meta is the parent company to Facebook. Essentially, all it takes is a subpoena from a judge to the legal department. And in my experience, it takes a few weeks, if you're lucky, to get the information back. They'll pull the information for you to the extent that they have to. Some of the companies out there, Meta is not one of them. Meta is very cooperative with court orders, but some of the messaging apps out there actually fight
Well, there's
court
also
orders
another
for
issue.
things like that.
Yeah. So there's
So it's
another
kinda-
issue with it is the being offshore. So does a server outside the country have to comply with the U.S. law? And the question is no.
that?
Yeah. So basically,
The short answer is
if
no.
the server is located in another country, then no, we're probably not going to be able to subpoena that information for a regular court case. Now, maybe some government level cases they might be able to, but not for normal cases.
Yeah, and Tom, that's one of the things, we always, for our home shield clients that have come under attack, we always advise them after our security is installed to sign up with Proton Mail. Proton will not give information to anybody. They don't care. They're not going to do it. That's 90% true. They actually do pretty well. If you prove that someone is doing something nefarious on their platform, Proton actually does have a team of people to address that. They do. But yeah, for the most part, they don't cooperate with court orders, and that's what people love about their platform, is they're so focused on that privacy and that security.
All right. So beyond
Okay,
messaging apps, what else can people do to keep their phone secure?
Yeah, so mobile phone security, smartphone security is interesting. It's interesting. You have encryption, and you have the same choice of anti-malware apps that everybody else has. There's some free ones out there. Avast, for instance, Avast offers one. I believe AVG also offers a free mobile security agent. Definitely should have some of those running. Have something running. Beyond that, a lot of it comes down to good practices and just kind of hygiene when you're on your phone. For instance, when your phone pops up and says, "Hey, there's a new update ready. Do you want to install it now?" The answer is yes. Yes, you do. You definitely want to install that now. Those updates are pushed for a lot of reasons. The main driving reason is always security. They're patching some sort of security flaw that they found in the initial launch or something. There's any number of things can create vulnerabilities and exploits. So the manufacturer pushes out this update that closes that particular vulnerability or list of vulnerabilities in the phone and the operating system. So first and foremost, update your phones. So stop clicking schedule later, things like that. If it's truly a bad time, like it's actually a bad time, okay, sure, no problem. But that night, that evening, when you go home before bed, first thing in the morning, whatever it is, make sure you remember to install that update. That's very, very important. It's one of the major things you can do to protect yourself. And there's probably a lot of...
You just schedule it, because who's going to really remember to do it later if they deferred it now? You could schedule it too.
Yep.
I've
you
been
can.
really bad over the years.
In the early days, they didn't give you the schedule option. It was just yes or no.
They didn't.
Yeah. But now you can schedule it.
I used to defer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we need to stop doing that.
I have. I know now. I know better
all
now.
of the all of the updates that are being pushed out, they're addressing vulnerabilities that someone in the security team for Verizon found, or whoever found. Something else which is really, really important is users really should avoid using public Wi-Fi. Just in general, as a general sense. Public Wi-Fi, especially if you go to the airport or Starbucks. If the airport and Starbucks are two easy targets for us when we conduct operations, it's so easy to fool people into connecting to something that's bad or breaching those networks because there are so many users on them and collecting information. It's just it's bad. It's like the Wild West. You wouldn't intentionally walk into the middle of a gunfight. And that's kind of what you're doing when you join some random public wireless network. You're hoping you're not walking into the middle of an ambush. So in general, it's a very, very good idea to avoid using public Wi-Fi, period. Just absolutely period. If you have to, and it happens for personal or business reasons, sometimes you just have to do it. Please make sure you're using a VPN while you are using that network. So the VPN provides a little tunnel of encryption, a little tunnel of protection around your particular internet connection. So while you may be using public wireless, your particular data transmission going over that network is protected. So that's what the VPN does for you. Also, disabling unnecessary features on phones. This is a really big one. Bluetooth and AirDrop in public places, you should probably disable. Especially with AirDrop, the default settings on AirDrop let anybody AirDrop anything to you. I heard one story where there was a pilot about to take off on the tarmac, and one of the passengers kept AirDropping him particular photos directly to his phone. Yeah. And so it got so bad, they actually had to deboard the plane. She was taken off into custody. So yeah, you really don't want people to have the ability to interface with your device without your permission. So disabling Bluetooth in public places, disabling your AirDrop features, that's Those are all very, very good ideas. Now, if you're just at home, you're hanging out at home, you're chilling, it's not like there's some dude lurking in your bushes. Hopefully there's not, who's going to have access to your phone or anything. So yeah, those are very good ideas. And then the always, always true, use strong passwords for things and use biometrics as an acceptable form of passwords and enable two-factor authentication. Your multi-factor authentication is critically important. For those listeners that aren't immediately familiar with what MFA multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication is, when you go to sign in to a website, sometimes it will say, okay, we just texted a code or a one-time password to your phone. We need you to put it in, and then we'll allow you access to the website. That's what multi-factor authentication is. So you have to know the password to the website, and you must possess the phone that they texted. So something you know and something you have is kind of the general basis of two-factor and multi-factor authentication. Just to recap, it's really just have good hygiene, good user hygiene, be thinking about security, update your devices when they tell you to update them. That's important. That's really important. Avoid using public Wi-Fi where you can. If you have to, use a VPN to keep your traffic safe. Disable Bluetooth and AirDrop in public places, especially if they're crazy touristy public places. Your tourist attractions and things, those are always a hotbed of illicit activity like this. And then use strong passwords, use your biometrics where you can, and then enable two-factor authentication on absolutely everything. It's pretty much a default offering for all apps now. You should have MFA enabled on absolutely everything.
Also, as an alternative to the public Wi-Fi, most carriers now include a personal mobile hotspot in your plan at no extra charge. So a lot of people probably have it and don't know. So check it out. And you might have your own pocket Wi-Fi available from your phone that can power your laptop or other devices.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it used to be kind of hit or miss, Elaina, with the providers that would let you hotspot or not. But I think most of them have.
I think it's like included now, pretty inclusively.
Yeah,
that's my go-to.
Hey, I'm on Verizon. I know Verizon does.
Same.
Yeah. So Tom, there's a handful of things that people can do both technically and behaviorally.
All good
to
advice.
Keep them safe.
Okay, so we have a question from one of our viewers. What happens if someone hacks my phone, even though it's been using encryption apps?
Sure. So that is an excellent question, and it's one that we deal with almost weekly at BCI, right? If someone compromises the phone itself that the encrypted app is installed on, then there's a very strong likelihood they're going to have access to everything you did in that app. So the messages are encrypted, yes. Content is encrypted, yes. But it's unencrypted for the user because we have to be able to see our stuff, right? And so if someone compromises the platform that the app is installed on, that's a problem. And that's actually a really big problem with artificial intelligence, with AI solutions right now, Tom, is folks like us, ethical hacking firms, we're able to compromise the servers that AI code is installed on, and then we can do whatever we want to with it. Kind of the same thing with messaging apps. So if you're sending photos, if you're sending documents, if you're sending messages that you don't necessarily want to stay around forever, you should probably look at messaging apps that have auto delete options like Snapchat. Snapchat is really popular for a reason, because you can set it to auto delete everything and it deletes it from everywhere, off of Snapchat servers, off of the phone and everything. And it's quite a pickle when you try to do an investigation or something. And Tom, you've probably run into this. And they were using Snapchat to communicate, but everything is freaking deleted, and you can't actually get your hands on anything. But yeah, so if the phone is compromised,
how do you know? How would you know if it was?
Let's just say your phone gets stolen. So your phone is compromised, right? Because it's stolen. And let's say they managed to figure out your passcode. Maybe it was 1234. We see that a lot. Then that messaging app, Signal, WhatsApp, whatever it is, bad news. It's compromised. They're going to be able to open it, and they're going to be able to see whatever the app has stored in it. So in terms of what to do, first is be on the lookout for remote breaches, some signs of phone hacks, random overheating. If you've been watching Netflix or Hulu on your phone for 20 minutes and your phone gets hot, that's normal. It's okay. But if you're just walking around the mall, if it's just sitting down at home or something and it starts to overheat, that's a problem. So that could be an indicator that something has happened. Some people actually look at their data usage. Some people do not. So every month when your carrier sends you your bill, you should log into whatever backend they have and look at your data usage. And if you see a giant 400% spike or sometimes even a 4,000% spike in your data usage, something clearly has changed. And if it wasn't your behavior, if you weren't sending, 1,000 PDFs to everybody every night, yeah, so something is wrong. So there's a lot of data going through your phone and we need to find out why, what, who, where, all of those fun things. So those are unusual behaviors. Some other things to look out for: random screen flashes where, looks like something opened and immediately closed, something like that. If you see that happen, that might also indicate that your phone has been compromised. So in terms of what to do, first thing you do is turn the phone off. And you have a couple of options. If you want to try to roll the dice and deal with it yourself, you can do a factory reset on the phone and hope that the issue goes away. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Yeah, you've had a solid maybe of that fixing it. It is what it is. Contacting someone like Blue Chameleon, someone like us, so that we can actually do, a forensic analysis, see what the impact and the implications are and things like that. That's always the best idea. But I get it. If you want to roll the dice and go, yeah, okay, sure, factory reset your phone, maybe it works.
Just turn it off and throw it in the garbage.
Yeah, basically. Throw in the blender and go buy a new phone.
Get a new one. I mean, we've come across some individuals and it feels like no matter what, if the phone's wiped, if you have a new Proton, new Gmail, new messaging, new app, you start from scratch, still something's up or something's going on. Like, you can do all those things and then there's still something lurking, or you can see the battery draining or getting hot or activity when you're sleeping, right?
I promise you this, and this is something I'll continue to say on every episode. A hacker's job is to be sneakier than the other person. So if they can get malware installed in the firmware or the BIOS of the phone, it doesn't matter how many times you do a factory reset, it's still there. That's what some of the Chinese security camera manufacturers like Huawei and stuff did. They baked in malware into the firmware, which you can't really be changed by the end users. And they were spying on people, legit spying on people. So yeah, the world's crazy. The world is that crazy.
We've come a long way from the first camera flip phone.
Tom
Yes.
It's wild out there. A lot of our users on the podcast, they are under attack, or they perceive that they're under attack. And there's almost like a cultural stigma built around that, right? Like people are like, oh no, you're just put your tinfoil hat on, whatever. When in the reality is probably everybody has had their phone compromised already. They probably don't know it. They minimally probably have Pegasus or something on their phones. We want to make it clear to our users that the stuff you're experiencing is real. We believe you because we know how to do it. That's an important message to get out there, I think, to our audience. The whole reason we started this podcast with the crew that we have is to get that message out. We do believe you. There is help available. And so I feel like that's a really important message for us to get out there to the audience.
Exactly. We touched on this once before, and the mental damage it can do just going through something like this, or not having people believe you, or like you said, the stigma that goes with it, or this. It's scary and it's hard. Even on Thanksgiving, I was approached by a cousin's friend, like one of my family members' friends, like, I need to talk to you. This is what's going on. And I was like, wow, it must be really hard for you. And he's like, yes, ready to just fall apart, like, because no one believes them, or they just, yeah, okay, and you move on. But when you think about what that person goes through with every device, or feeling followed or hacked or listened to, and it could drive you batty.
They can. Absolutely can. It's a big problem.
And then who do you go to? Who helped you? We can.
Yeah, and there's not,
We can.
honestly, the unfortunate truth is, Tom and Elaina, there's not that many companies like us that can help, that are helping.
No.
It's one thing to experience this at work when you have an IT department, you have trained people, you have government agencies, you have whole companies set up to help you. But when you come under attack at home, what do? Right? I mean, that's the whole reason we started the Hacked at Home podcast.
Exactly. To spread the
Was to
word.
reach audience. It's very, very real, and there's honestly not a lot of help available to folks that are experiencing a digital attack in their personal lives.
Very
So
little.
it's nice that
Yep,
we're able to
that's
help
why
a
we're
little bit.
here. So we've
Absolutely.
covered a lot today. What is the one thing that our listeners should take away from this episode?
So I'd say the one thing listeners should take away from this episode is don't take your phone for granted. It's easy to take our phones for granted because it's just always there. It's just here. We have it on our possession, which makes us feel like it's safe, but it's really not. So while you're using your phone, when you're downloading apps, when you're considering which apps to use to message your friends and things, make encryption a priority. There are plenty of apps that are end-to-end encrypted, that offer end-to-end encryption, that are perfectly mainstream, wonderful functionality, very easy to use. You shouldn't really have to use any of the fringe apps that are kind of shady. There's plenty of options out there. So make encryption a habit for you and change your mindset, and remember that mobile security is personal security. And if you care about keeping yourself safe, then you have to care about keeping your phone safe.
They do. A lot of the times people get overwhelmed and think that it's hard or complicated. And honestly, just a lot of small steps, small habit changes, and just paying attention can make a really big impact in your cybersecurity for your device, for your laptop, for your phone, updating your software, not deferring it like I used to do 15 times, doing it right away, but understanding the importance of doing that. You're doing it to protect yourself. Something happened, you need to update it. You need to keep everything current and pay attention to the encryption options and the apps that you're setting up and the permission requests when you're adding things too. So keep it simple, keep it rolling. And you need help, we're here.
Love that. Keep it simple and keep it rolling. I love that.
All right. If you
All right, Tom,
enjoyed
there you go,
today's
my friend.
episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. If you have any questions or need any help with your cybersecurity, please reach out to Blue Chameleon Investigations, either at www.trustpci.com or 704-233-7758. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time at Hacked at Home.
Take care, everybody.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Thanks. Bye.